Welcome to Potentiality, a space for big questions, deep conversations, and shared wisdom around the most meaningful thing we do as human beings, which is how we parent and educate the next generation. My guest today is Andrew Freeman, the founder and director of Coherence Education, a learning community built on the belief that every child carries within them a unique genius zone waiting to be discovered and amplified. Andrew's path here ran from a college career as a two-sport athlete and triple major to an MBA at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and then into years at companies like HP, Microsoft, and Netscape, where he saw firsthand how much the world beyond school rewards creativity, communication, and emotional intelligence, the very capacities traditional education so often leaves underdeveloped. That realization became the founding question behind Coherence Education and its Spark framework, weaving spiritual connection, project-based learning, the arts, relationships, and community into a single vision of whole child growth. Welcome to Potentiality, Andrew. I've been so looking forward to this conversation.
Me as well, Alina. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Andrew, I want to start with your own story. You were a two-sport athlete and a triple major, computer science, math, and accounting, long before Coherence Education came into being. I am curious what that season in your life taught you about your own capacity, and whether you can trace a line from that young man pushing himself in so many directions at once to the founder who now asks children to find their own zone of genius instead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that question. It's an interesting answer because I think part of why I took so many classes and got three majors is I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I got out of college. I had two majors lined up, and then it was way back when the computer industry was just starting, and so I had my two majors wrapped up. I went an extra year to college because I'd had a knee injury playing basketball, and so I redshirted a year. But there was a computer science course this summer before my last year, and all of a sudden it lit me up. It's like, oh wow, this computer thing looks pretty exciting. So I ended up basically getting a computer science major in a year, my last year. And in terms of capacity, your question is, I just I just learned that with focus and just determination, you can do everything. Not that you should, which
Mhm.
is what I'm trying to teach my students right now. I mean, the path that I chose is something that I would completely try to talk my students out of, because I do believe we start with our unique genius. We should build from there. We all have a path of purpose and a direction. And I went everywhere, but I think my natural path of purpose. But one quick story I'll tell you is, right as I was
Mhm.
getting out of school and I was trying to figure out what to do, I had a voice of God moment where I heard a
Mhm.
voice tell me you're supposed to transform education for kids, or and it rocked my world. I love the sound of it. I've always loved teaching. I've always thought that there's a better way to teach than the way I was taught. It just seemed really boring and inefficient. Even though I took
Mhm.
so much school, I didn't really enjoy it. So I thought, wow, am I going to become a teacher? Maybe that's what I'll do when I get out of school. And I looked into it, but I realized I'm not going to be able to transform education from inside of the classroom, a traditional type classroom. So then I decided to just go out into the world, learn as much as I could, and hopefully return to education at a later date, and with the tools and skills that I would need to actually
Mhm.
do something meaningful. So that was my journey. It took a long time to get here, but I started the school 3 years ago, and it has absolutely been a dream come true. And in retrospect, that path was perfect to give me everything I needed to get the school started.
Mhm. It's fascinating as I'm listening to you, and thank you for sharing your story. I see so many parallels. So many of us are being tapped to reimagine education because I think as a collective, right, we're evolving and we're transitioning into just higher consciousness, I would say. And it puts us in places that perfectly shapes us into what we need to create. This is what I find, at least in my own journey, and sounds like it's your journey has been similar to it. We will be talking a lot more about coherence education and what you've been able to create within the last 3 years, like you said. But I really wanted to ask you how your experience inside companies such as Hewlett Packard, Microsoft, Netscape, those giants that were so desirable, 10, 20 years ago, and now Tesla and SpaceX. So I want to ask you, what did the technology industry teach you about how the
Mm.
real world actually rewards talent and how
Mm.
different that is from what traditional school usually teaches?
Yeah, it's really an interesting question, Alina. One of the companies I got offered a job at IBM when I got out of college as well. And interestingly, at the time, IBM wouldn't let you start working for the first year. They would send you to IBM University and teach you, it was a very intensive program for a year before they would let you get out into the world and talk to customers and things like that. So, I mean, the premise basically that IBM had is you really you're not ready for the real world. You're not ready for this career. You need to still learn a lot. And I started thinking like, wow, that's really interesting. I got all of these degrees, took all of this schooling, but it didn't really prepare me for this world that I'm stepping into. And that's what I really realized. I ended up working at Hewlett Packard first, and it was just a deep dive into all the real world skills that I didn't learn in school. How do you work with people? How do you communicate? How do you manage a project? How do you do things like marketing or sales or project management? And I just thought, wow, why didn't we learn that in school? Because so many of the things I learned in school never got applied to to work.
Mhm. Thank you. And I think that's what we see with this young generation even more. I think they're more interested in learning those real life skills rather than just abstract subjects that are irrelevant and not applicable. And the world is moving so fast, and especially with AI, we're going to talk about that. It's
Mm,
disrupting every industry, including education. So
yes.
looking at what's truly going to be valuable for this next generation walking into the workforce is really our job as those of us who are reimagining education as we speak. Um, your work, Andrew, centers on a single question. Why so many adults only discover emotional intelligence and self-leadership, as you just spoke to, with so many other capacities, only after years of struggle instead of learning them as children? And you already alluded to that. Now, can you take me back to that moment that question became something you knew you had to absolutely build your life around?
Yeah, you know what it was is I just had a number of failed relationships, and I realized
Mm,
it came down to my communication skills.
mm,
So it made me realize like wow, what if I had learned these communication skills when I was a kid? What kind of impact would that have had on my relationships, both romantic relationships, friend relationships, work relationships? And then it just made me realize why am I learning this as an adult? Something as basic as how to effectively communicate with people, how to actively listen, how to communicate feelings and needs, how to set boundaries. And then I went in a little time machine in my imagination and went back to when I was a kid and thought, wow, how would my life have changed as a kid too if I knew how to say no, if I knew how to express a feeling or a need. And so that's when I realized I want to teach this to as many kids as I can, because not only will it change their life as kids, but of all the things that can prepare you for adulthood, it really is those people skills and self knowledge, and just even simply how to run a project. Why wouldn't you learn that before you're
mm,
actually running projects in real life?
mm. Absolutely. It reshapes everything. Once you change, you learn how to set those boundaries, say no, and really live more authentically, live your truth. Then the relationships that you attract are very different, like qualitatively, right? It's the communities that you end up building, and just like literally the ripple effect that you end up creating is very different from
Mm.
the underdeveloped version of ourselves, I should say. Now, everything you do or the model that you've created, Andrew, you call it inside out education.
Yes.
And that can mean something different depending on who is describing it. I'd love to hear, in your own words, what inside out truly means to you and
Mm.
where it differs most from the model most families have inherited without ever questioning it.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Alina. That is such a big question because stepping into education, way late in my career, I haven't really been indoctrinated into, you need to sit in social studies for this many hours and English for this many
Mhm.
hours and math for this many hours. Instead, I've really approached school like I would an executive coach, because
Mhm.
you wouldn't tell an executive or a big time athlete who's just trying to improve performance, you wouldn't say like I know you're really busy, but I want you to go take this class that has nothing to do with your life for 100 hours, and then we'll come back and work on things. Of course, you don't do that. You start with a blank sheet of paper for everyone. You decide, what is it that you really want? What hours, should we, of your hours, what are we going to focus on that will give you the biggest bang for the buck and make the biggest difference in your life and get you what you want? And I thought, why wouldn't we do that with kids? So with our kids, the inside out education starts with discovering each of their unique geniuses, and every kid has a unique genius. And then they also have a path of purpose. They have a direction. They don't maybe see to the end of the path, but they know what path they want to go down right now. Is it a music path? Is it a entertainment path? Is it an art path? Everyone knows they're being drawn somewhere. So once we know their genius zone, what's in the middle of their passions, natural talents, and values, we can give them projects to develop that. We never talk them out of it and say like, well, that's not practical, Johnny. you know that
Mhm.
you want to play guitar all the time. There's no future in that. So we want to find out what they want to learn, what they're great at, and then what direction they're going in. Start with a blank sheet of paper and make use of every hour they're in the class. And literally every student has a different educational plan. Like if I was an executive coach working with 10 executives, each one would have a different plan. So we treat the kids the same way. And what's beautiful about that is it's all time super well spent. They learn everything that they need to learn around language and math, right? Without having to focus on that. They learn everything that they need to really support their path. And
Mhm.
the best thing about it is it makes kids love school. I think one of the
Mhm.
main reasons that kids don't love school is they don't want to learn things that they're not interested in. Just like us, those times that we were forced to sit in HR classes that maybe we didn't see a point in, it was just like torture. And I think that's exactly the case with a lot of the school that kids go to right now.
Mhm. I want to ask you to go a little deeper and provide more details around the Genius Zone projects. I'd love to understand what it looks like in practice.
Mm.
Uh, does it reveal, let's say, the Genius Zone, does it reveal itself early or it takes patient searching? And how do you know when the child has found it? So I'm really curious, and it's probably different for every child, but I'm just curious about you as an educator, your approach and your model's approach. Like, how do you really find the zone of genius? And what tells you? What are the markers that tell you that this child has found it?
Yeah. So the process that we go through when we're starting down the Genius Zone path with each kid is I first have them take a Genius Zone survey. You'll
Mm,
find it on our website, but I'm simply just taking their top 3 to 5 passions, which we define as things they love to do so much they would do it even if they weren't in school, and they lose track of time. They love it so much. So their passions, natural talents, the things that come really easily to them, and their values. What do they care about? And we
mm,
ask questions like, what when you hear about things in the news, what makes you really happy or really sad or really mad? And it gives us
mm,
clues about their values. So what I do is I feed that into AI, actually, and I
mm,
ask AI to generate 10 sample projects that would incorporate their passions, talents, and values. And about
Mm.
half the time out of those 10 projects, one of them, the kid will just go, oh, I could do that at school. I'm like,
Mm.
yes, that's your project. And about half the time, they're like, well, that's kind of cool. And I can tell we haven't quite gotten it. So I'll just delve in more and ask them how they spend their time, what they're excited about, where their energy's going. And usually within about 5 minutes, there'll be something where their eyes light up. And that's when we know we have the right thing. So that's step one, is finding their genius zone project.
Mhm.
And again, the whole idea is kids learn by doing, not by listening. So we want them doing things to really develop that genius zone. So what we do is we have a structured hour class where they come
Mhm.
in, they tell us what their goals are for their project. They tell everybody what their project is. I'm creating a YouTube video to encourage kids to meditate. One of our kids is doing that.
Mm.
So okay, what do you want to get done today? Well, I'm just going to want to finalize my script so I can record it. Like, great, okay. And then each of the kids will go through that. We'll do a little connection exercise with them because we have an online school. It gives them a chance to get to know each other. We'll ask them things like if you could be any animal and take on its superpower, what animal would it be and what would it allow you to do? And they'll kind of gather together in breakout rooms, do that. And then when we're ready to go, we'll do a thunderclap. I'll say, take your unique genius, feel it between your hands. You're going to expand it, warm it up. It's the most powerful force in the universe for you. 1, 2, 3, thunder, clap. Everybody claps, and I'll say space laser like focus for the next 45 minutes. And what it does is it allows the kids to just focus and, you know, kids love these projects, but kids and adults get distracted really easily. So
Mhm.
it gives this structure where they're working, and if they're about to drift off, they'll look at the screen and say, oh, everybody else is still working on the projects. Okay, we've got 15 more minutes, I'll keep going. If they have any problems, we have mentors in there. We'll drop into a breakout room, we'll get them unstuck and get going. And I'll tell you what, Alina, kids don't know what they don't know. So
Mhm.
it's amazing what they can get done when they work on their Genius Zone project for an hour or two a day. Over 8 weeks, they'll write whole screenplays, they'll start businesses, things that would take us probably 3 times as long just to think about. It's incredible what they do in that environment.
That is amazing. And as you said, as a life coach, I know the same thing. You can't really mistaken what lights them up for anything else. I mean, it is
Mhm.
so obvious that when you see that spark, that's it, or at least that's how what you need to develop further. And it can take different shapes over time, but at least that's an anchor where you start. That's amazing, Andrew. And I'm curious, what age groups you work with and how those paths may differ from each other. I know you have part-time and full-time paths.
Mhm.
So if you could explain a little further more of the structure in terms of the age groups and what's the difference between part-time and full-time, and somebody who attends part-time, like what is their preparation in terms of accountability to prepare them,
Mhm.
for the next level and maybe ultimately for college if those are college-going kids.
Yes, yes. So here's how we structure it. So it's a one-room schoolhouse. Kids
Mhm.
are 8 to 18. Because it's inside out learning, they're all learning from the inside out. So they can all stay in their own lane, even though
Mm.
there are people doing all different things and they're all different ages. It actually works really nicely to have like the little kids behave so much better. The fact that there are big
Mhm.
kids there, they're not
Mhm.
they're they're not wanting to look silly in front of the big kids. The big kids, same thing. And they don't want to set a bad example for the little kids. So we've seen that works really well. So the way we structure it is we have 3 different tracks. We have a knowledge track. And so some things for knowledge transfer, it works just fine to have one teacher to many kids. So if
Mm.
I'm teaching ancient civilizations and we're learning about, Borobudur, or we're learning about Angkor Wat or something like that, I can provide an overview. The main thing we do in those knowledge classes is we just make sure to talk minimally so the kids can keep their hands and mouths busy learning
Mm.
through assignments and exercises. Again, kids don't learn by hearing adults talk.
Mhm.
So that's our knowledge track, and then we have a genius zone track where
Mhm.
kids are doing more complex projects. So we
Mm.
we have the mentor in those rooms tends to be an entrepreneur. A lot of those kids are setting up little media companies or businesses, or they're learning how to be an architect, and designing buildings and learning how to create, submit plans to architects and that sort of thing. So there's that genius zone, and then we have labs. So labs focus on skills, and I think one thing that schools get wrong is they put everybody in one of these big classrooms, whether they're trying to
Mhm.
learn knowledge or skills.
Mhm.
So a skill, like knowledge would be, okay, what's the grammatic structure of a
Mhm.
sentence? Right, you can teach that, but to learn how to write, you don't learn that in a big classroom. Also, you don't learn a foreign language in a big classroom. That's why you can take 6 years of French and go to France and not be able to order lunch or understand
Mhm.
what the waiter's saying, right? Same with math. Math is a skill that they try to teach in a big classroom, and I think that's why it's so ineffective. So what we do for skills is we have labs. We have 4 different labs. We call it
Mhm.
universe, earth, light, and sound. Universe is math and coding. Earth is geography and foreign language. Light is art and filmmaking. Sound is music and storytelling. And we have an expert mentor in each of
Mhm.
those labs. So let's say one of our kids just wants to play violin. So
Mhm.
she'll go into the sound lab, and there'll be a professional musician in there. And so she'll practice and be able to
Mhm.
give her pointers, and it'll be like that executive coaching type of situation. She knows what she wants. Same with somebody doing art, somebody learning math. It can happen so much more efficiently in those type of labs. So basically what we do for each of the kids is like the executive coach, we decide what's going to be the educational package for this kid, and then we determine how much time they're going to spend in each of those tracks, so they can really make the most use of that time.
Fully customized, it sounds like, and it's amazing. And so they do get guidance from real experts, real world experts, professional
Yes,
musicians, and
yes,
okay,
they do. And
incredible.
each kid has their own life coach that they meet with once a week. So
Mm.
so we start with an educational plan, but like all good processes, we keep getting feedback. What's working? What's not working? Okay, let's put more time in here, or let's change our focus to this. And it's great for a kid to have an adult outside of their family who's just in their corner, and they can talk with, check in with, and again, it's just a way to keep this feedback loop going for
Mhm.
each of the kids.
Mhm. Andrew, from my experience at least, I know that parents, many of them are trained or they're used to from the beginning to trust grades, test scores, rankings as proof that their child is thriving. What is it
Yeah.
like to ask a family to trust something which may appear to be far less measurable, their
Yeah.
child's inner compass, through all the coaching mentorship that you do? So, how do you really build the buy-in for this type of a model?
Yeah. Well, we're a new model. So the people who are in our school are truly early adopters. And
Mm.
just like in tech, we always had this saying, nobody got fired for choosing IBM. Parents, nobody criticizes a parent for putting their kid in
Of
a
course
mainstream
not.
school, because
Hmm.
everybody does it. So the people who are interested in what we're doing, they tend to be already thinking outside of the box. We have a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza people who who have done a lot of inner work and realize, wow, that would be really great to incorporate more of that into a school with our student. So my hope is people see the amazing results that we're getting, and also how happy the kids are going to our school. Our biggest complaint is that our vacations are too long. Can you imagine that in a mainstream
That's
school?
a really good problem to have.
So as the parents start talking to each other, I think we'll get more people who aren't on this leading edge early adopter path.
Mm, that's amazing. You mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza, so I want to ask the next question. I know that every day at Master Path School, you open with coherence practices drawn from Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and Heart Math Institute's work.
Yes.
So a child meets regulation and clarity before they meet any subject at all. I
Mhm.
wonder, Andrew, what have you noticed this does inside a student over time and in how they carry themselves through a hard project, through a conflict with a peer, or just the ordinary friction of a long school day?
Yeah. Well, back to what executive coaches would do is they would get the executive to prepare themselves for the day. So do some kind of mindfulness, some kind of movement, some kind of intention setting. Prepare yourself before you you go into the fray. And so I was just thinking, why wouldn't we do this with the kids? And what I see is so many of the kids, um, a lot of times they get up earlier than they would normally choose. So they kind of drag themselves in and they look sleepy. But we'll do they get their choice of different movement routines. They can do
Mhm.
qigong, yoga, calisthenics, walking meditation, or dance. And they all kind of have their thing and they break off. They do that for about 10 minutes. And I already noticed a big change just getting their body moving first. And
Mhm.
then we'll drop in, use a kind of a heart lock in, all a heart math for 3 or 4 minutes. And then by the time that's done, I can tell even a bigger shift. And then they get out the journals. They write a gratitude list. You get in that vibration of gratitude, everything just starts going better. They'll
Mhm.
review their vision boards and their big dreams in life. They'll set intentions for the day, and they'll do some fun connection exercises with each other. And then find, by the time they get to their class, whatever that is next, they're energized and ready to go. So the thing that I really love about it is they can really notice. They, let's say they do that 5 days a week in class. They'll notice the days that they don't do that, and then the idea is that this becomes a lifelong habit for them.
How much time do you dedicate to it daily? So that's the first thing in the morning. And how long is it? 20 minutes, 30 minutes? How long is it usually?
Yeah, that's the first hour actually that
Oh,
we
it's a whole
do.
hour.
We
Mm.
call it a line and shine. And then there are four more hours of classes, usually divided roughly half into genius zone project type work and then half into knowledge life skill type classes.
Mhm. Andrew, I want to ask about the framework that you've developed, the Spark framework, SPARC. It holds together spiritual connection, project-based learning, the arts, relationships, and community. And I'm especially drawn to spiritual connection being named so explicitly, since most schools leave that dimension of a child completely unspoken. What led you to name it as part of your framework?
Yeah, I think because when I was 15 years old, I took a transcendental meditation class and
Mm.
I've been a lifelong meditator since. And it instantly completely transformed my life in such positive ways. All of a sudden, school became easier because I could really focus. Sports, much easier. I was a super shy kid. And I noticed I had more confidence to connect with people. So it I really found that it's one of the most valuable habits and skills that I've brought into my life. And so obviously I want to transform the lives of all of our students. And I really believe at the heart of that is learning that coherence, with the right brain, really experiencing it and feeling what it's like when you drop in and connect. And then we do a lot of left brain work to teach kids about the unified field, a lot of the Dr. Joe Dispenza hard math knowledge, Nassim Haramein physics
Mhm.
to learn what is the nature of that field that we're connecting to when we meditate. So it starts making sense to us, like, oh, the unified field is infinitely powerful. It has all knowledge in all parts because it's holographic. It's connected to everything. And so as kids start realizing that and feeling it, all of a sudden they feel more empowered, they feel more connected, and they feel more energized.
That is incredible. You're really teaching them the laws of creation through unified physics of Nassim Haramein and really the absolute truth. For me, it's like there is relevant truth, right? It's like my truth is probably different from your truth, and there's
Mhm.
absolute truth that nobody can
Mhm.
really argue. So you're really teaching them foundational, like laws of metaphysics, laws of creation, and that's incredibly powerful. I'm curious, Andrew, if somebody were to shadow one of your students, basically spend a full week alongside one of your students, moving through mentor check-ins, project work, coherence practices, skill labs, the core session, so everything that you just described, what do you hope they would understand about how it all fits together rather than reading it as a list of separate programs? Because my philosophy is how do we create an educational model where we get to exercise wholeness? So
Mm.
I'm just curious if somebody were to shadow one of your students, how would they see all of these pieces fit together into
Yeah.
developing and almost like ushering into this world a whole child?
Uh, that's an amazing question, Alina. Thank you. So, what the shadower would see would probably be what I see, and I hear from the parents that they see all the time, which is when kids are really spending time learning the things that they love. So going back to the genius zone, if they're doing things that they're passionate about, well, they're having fun because it's stuff that they want to do anyway. When they're doing things they're naturally good at and talented at, it builds their self-esteem because as they're doing it, like wow, I got it going on. I'm pretty good here. And then when it aligns with their values, the results are really meaningful and they're really proud of them. So as they bring all this good juice into their life through this learning and also through really positive relationships with other kids in the school, what we find is the kids just start opening up. They're more expressed, they're more confident, they're they're a more energized part of the household where they are, and they're just more excited about life. So that's what I hope the shadower would see, and that's what I would expect them to see.
So you're really speaking a lot to joy and fun, which is not necessarily the worldview many of us inherit because there's a lot of conditioning, and I'm going to name it that way, that there is no pain, no gain, working
Yes.
hard. Our kids carry a lot of stress. They're constantly chasing, like checking off some boxes, to meet this demand and that demand. And you're really speaking about living in joy is about living your truth, right?
Mm,
It's about living your authenticity. And I think that's what this type of a model truly cultivates ultimately. And I feel like only by living in our zone of genius and walking our authentic path, we can make our biggest contribution to the world. Because if we truly believe that each child has that genius, the gift to offer to the world, then this type of a model really creates the environment when that seed
mm,
of intelligence can fully grow into what it needs to become for the larger collective. And I think that's what we oftentimes miss when we're really focusing about the conventional success path for the individual, and which oftentimes deprives them of what they are here to offer to the larger
mm,
collective. And so oftentimes I feel like our kids are here not only for their own experiences, their own evolution, but it's also the demand of the time for the collective, what the earth needs, what humanity needs. And I think you're definitely building a model that is helping that type of a evolution for the individual that is bigger than themselves.
mm.
Um, so, with all that joy and fun, I'm curious, Andrew, what do you think about the role struggle plays in this model and whether the goal is to remove it completely or to
Mm.
change a child's relationship to it?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. And
Mm,
going back to what you were talking about before, that a lot of times it's sort of that struggle and tough love that schools think like, we're going to get this kid lots of grit. We'll get them doing lots of stuff that they don't really want to do, but they're going to do anyway, and that'll be a
mm,
life skill. And what I find is that that's not that's not really that valuable compared to compared to them actually pushing themselves to get done something that they feel really compelled to get done. And so, what I
mm,
mean by that is most schools have a competitive environment. Kids are competing for grades, they're competing for social status, and the schools are engineered that way
mhm,
to create that. I think that because they were engineered for factories where they would compete on how many pieces can you get done in an hour, sort of thing. So schools still have that built in. But what I
mhm,
really find is with this inside out type of style, kids are only competing against themselves to keep creating a better version of themselves and create something that they're really proud of on the other side of that. So there is inner knowing, inner struggle, just like as we go through our own personal development, we learn a lot about ourselves. So the students do that as well. But what I really see by that environment where kids are competing with themselves and not each other is it becomes a very cooperative environment. And because every kid feels whole and complete in their lane, they're not trying to compete. and it gives them a perspective where they can really appreciate all of the other students in their lanes because they're satisfied. So they can say, wow, I'm doing great. And wow, you go too. You're doing great as well. And look at what you're doing. You're really good at that. So we're finding that there's zero bullying. It's much more
Mhm.
cooperation amongst the different classmates and just a really supportive, loving environment. And the last thing I'll say is I really believe it's the teacher's role to not really express tough love. And
Mhm.
the reason is that you've probably heard that's about dandelion kids and orchid kids,
Mhm.
right? So dandelion kids are the really resilient ones. You can be as tough as you want on them, and they'll be fine. They're going to continue to grow. What I find, especially in our school, vast majority of the kids are really sensitive orchid kids, and
Mhm.
they can get shut down so quickly. So what I do as a teacher, and I get all the other teachers to do, is that improv comedy rule of yes and for everything.
Mhm.
So we don't even say, oh, you could have done better on that. Try harder, because we find out the sensitive kids it'll shut them down and they'll stop
Mhm.
expressing. But if we're like wow, you did that. I see that. And what are you going to do next? Or what do you think is going to be the next step? It goes the opposite direction and it opens them up and creates a safe space. So yeah, for me, a teacher who really wants the best for kids and develop them and open them up, the tough love type of approach doesn't work nearly as well as the kind of watering the orchid and the
Mhm.
dandelion equally.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I really want to emphasize you said zero bullying.
Yeah.
Bullying is such a big problem in at least the traditional school model, and we bring all these assemblies and none of it really makes a difference because by design the school is not structured to do what your model is doing, and oftentimes we feel like the school model is not working, and I feel like it is doing exactly what it's designed to do. Like by design, this is what it was meant to do, and it's producing the results that it was designed for, except they're completely irrelevant in the day and age that we live in, and it doesn't really honor the human within. So it's so important to understand that it really needs to be redesigned fully. None of those like remediations that we're trying to bring into the existing industrial model, they don't really integrate and they don't change it because it is so calcified in the design that
Mm-hmm.
it was initially built for, and it's still producing what the industrial model needed 2 centuries ago, except it's not relevant now.
No, it is so not relevant now.
Mm. So I'm curious for a parent who has never questioned the traditional school model that we're just talking about, what is the first crack in that certainty that you may potentially open up with this model, or with your philosophy before you even mention the genius zone, the spark
Mm-hmm.
framework? Now, how do we bring more kids to experience this joy of learning and becoming fully themselves rather than just meeting the demands of an outdated model?
Yeah, the best way that I've found so far to try to get this across to parents is that this whole idea of nouns and verbs. So in the past and currently, mainstream school is training kids to be nouns, an engineer, an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor. So they're going to have this job where they're basically going to go and it'll be Groundhog Day for them every day, where they're just going to continue to do the same kind of process with whatever that job is, and they'll keep getting better at it over time. But they'll be that thing, right? And
Mm.
they're rewarded for not necessarily innovating. Like, think about an accountant; they're following certain standards and best practices. So with AI coming up, AI is going to almost wholesale replace all of the noun jobs. So that's what basically I get across to the parents is schools are training kids to become um, basically create kids are being trained for a future that will no longer exist that
Mhm.
AI is replacing, and really in the future kids need to be verbs. So
Mhm.
kids need to be creators, innovators, and the reason that works is AI by definition lives in the past. So it's working on past data, past information, past best practices, but we as humans, we're connected into the unified field where there is no time. So we have access to the past, present, and future. And someone like Einstein would talk about his amazing creative ideas. Like, I don't know where they came from. They just came to me through the universe. When our kids are tapped in, when we're in our genius zone, that's what happens. And then when we become a thought leader like that, we can use AI to
Mm.
get that innovation done, so much better and more quickly. So that's the vision I have for our kids is they're gonna go out into the world, fully develop genius zone. They're one of one. There's only one person who has that genius zone of this kid. They have all the key life skills. They know who they are. They're healthy inside and out, and they're ready to get that genius zone out into the world. Their creativity and innovation is online, and then they'll be ready to partner with AI to just accelerate. And so when I think about that, I think of currently, hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands, how many students I can get trained in this, getting out into the world in their genius zone, ready to create, ready to innovate, ready to solve big problems, create new opportunities. I just see this as being the fastest way to transform the world that I can imagine.
And I could not agree with every word that you just said. But I want to go a little deeper into the use of AI in your model, Andrew. So is that just used as a tool just to expand their capacities, or like what is really the application of AI in coherence education? So without me guessing anything, I want you to explain exactly how you utilize AI, especially how the students use it.
Yeah, yeah. So I recently attended a conference, and it was an online conference on education and AI. And I thought, I want to hear these guys' vision for how to incorporate AI and how to transform education. But 95% of the time was spent on how do we catch kids who are cheating with AI on their assignments. So the only thing I spoke of is like, have you guys ever asked the question, why do kids want to cheat using AI?
Mhm.
They're maybe they're not finding a lot of value in the assignment. So that's what we're finding is we allow the kids to use AI if they want to, but what we find is that for most of the kids with their projects, they don't want to outsource it because they want to do it. It's their passion. And so I would say 90% of our students don't use AI at all. They're learning violin, they're learning art, they're creating screenplays, that sort of thing, and they want to do it because they want to create. What I'm finding, the kids who are using AI are the ones who are starting businesses, and it works super well because the kid is in the CEO position and they're using
Mm.
AI as their underpaid staff, and it I really love that relationship because I want the kids to be in charge of AI rather than vice versa, and for it to
Mm.
accelerate them getting their creations out into the world. So
Mm.
I'm actually, frankly, been really surprised at how little our students use AI. It's very, very seldom for most of them.
Mm. That's amazing because their creativity or the needs that they like the fundamental human drives, they're satisfied in so many different ways that
Yeah.
there's really no need for AI. Because I see there's a lot of real fear among parents about technological unemployment as their
Yes.
kids, graduate from high school and ready to enter college. So there is this almost sense of disorientation, like where do we go? What do we do? And how stable and reliable that job, the career will be. And I think the building the capacities that you're building becoming so essential to understand that the jobs will be qualitatively different,
Mm.
and this generation will be shaping those jobs. Many of them don't exist yet. So it's not necessarily about the AI, it's about how they develop all other capacities for AI to always remain the tool for expansion, for acceleration, whatever it is that they need to do. But they, as a human being, like a whole human being, they really drive that process. I want
Yes,
to ask you,
exactly.
yeah, the last question, which is the traditional potentiality question in this podcast, Andrew. What is waiting to unfold in a child, in the family raising them, in the community holding them, and in humanity as a whole when education begins from the inside out?
Hmm. Well, I following up on our last question about AI, so all of these kids are going to be entering the world in this age of AI, which I like calling it the harmonic age.
Mm.
So these kids are going to a different world than the world we went into. So the world we went into, we could be kind of lazy as humans. There were enough jobs where we could just get a job to get a job and just show up. We didn't even necessarily have to be that good at it. And then we would make money. We could be lazy on the weekends, go party. Nothing wrong with that. But AI is going to change things. We're not going to be able to be lazy anymore. We need to go and be our best human selves. So that's what I see for these kids is with this inside out model, they're learning all of these things that we had to learn as adults. And they're learning them as kids when they have the time and they have the neural learning superpower to really assimilate all that information into their bodies. So I see these kids being at the top of their game in terms of their creativity and innovation and intuition. They've got that fully online. They've got what makes them really special in terms of their genius zone fully developed. They have the key life skills they need around career, people, money, and health to get that genius out into the world. And most importantly, is I really believe for our next phase of humanity, we need to get this community thing right. These cooperative communities where we can create much a much more effective model than the sum of the parts, where we get people together who are healthy, happy, know how to communicate with each other, know how to resolve conflict, and they're doing amazing, innovative things themselves in the world, and then they can cooperate with others. I really see that is our emergence into this next phase, and I really believe inside out education for the kids is the most direct path for getting them there.
Mhm. Thank you so much for this incredible dialogue, for sharing the wisdom, the lived experience, and pretty much your life work. Sounds like everything you've gone through as a professional, as a student, has really led you to creating what you're now offering to the world that is so timely and so needed. Is there anything that I did not ask you about, Andrew, but you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I would just encourage people to dip their toe in the water of inside out education. So let's say you are in the traditional school route. Great. Go on our website and take our Genius Zone survey and see if there are any projects that you guys could start at home. So to start developing these kids' genius zones. Also, just look and see if you could take one or two classes you maybe wouldn't normally take about people skills or intuition or blindfold training or even remote viewing. So you really tap these kids into their creativity. And I think just by doing some little things like that to move forward, whatever situation you're in, it's going to make a huge difference for your kid getting ready for this harmonic age that we're going into. And we have go to our website, coherenceeducation.org. We've got an open house every week if you want to drop in and learn more, have a conversation. Happy to do that. I'm very available as well if you want to set up time on my calendar, and you'll find out how to do that on the website as well.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And you already answered my next question, which was about how can people find you on the web. It's incredible what you offer. I remember it was a couple of years ago when I checked your website and I saw that you offer remote viewing, and I'm like, is this what you bring to the kids? So it might really take, some time for parents to explore, but the capacities that those classes open up, which we may consider sometimes even superhuman, but they are very human abilities that were lost, over the generations. So we really want to bring them back and understand what an incredible creation we are as humans
Mm.
and all the things that we can do if we know exactly how to utilize that intelligence in the most authentic and strategic way. So thank you for the work that you do in the world. It was a true honor to host you today at Potentiality. Thank you for sharing uh, honestly and with such depth everything that you've accumulated over the years of your professional experience. It's truly invaluable.
Thank you. I'm having the time of my life, Alina, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, getting the word out about so many more empowering ways for kids to develop themselves. So thank you so
Mhm.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for being with us today. I am grateful to each one of you for tuning in to today's episode, and I sincerely hope you found it insightful and valuable. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to never miss an episode. I will see you next time.